All right, today on the show, we have Moses Hall from Mo Hall Commercial and Urban Development here in Chicago. Let me tell you about Moses. Now, Moses Hall is a commercial broker and started his real estate career in 2014 as a licensed realtor. And through collaborative effort, his ultimate goal is to revitalize communities and build wealth through real estate on the south side of Chicago. Now, Moses's mission has been highlighted in publications as he received the prestigious honor of being named Realtor Magazine's 30 Under 30 class of 2019, which is a huge, huge deal. Moses previously served as a 2021 National Association of Realtors chair of the Commercial Economic Issues and Trend Forum. He's also the chair of the Global Business Council for the Illinois Realtors and is also on the National Association of Realtors Board of Directors. Please visit Moses at his website, which is Mo Hall. That's M-O Hall Commercial UD. So mohallcommercialud.com. And also follow him on Instagram at Mo Hall Commercial. By the way, both of those links are in our show notes. So follow him on Instagram and visit mohallcommercialud.com. Moses, thanks for being on our show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, well, you are such an amazing, I don't want to call you a rising star because I think your star is already in the sky. It's already risen, but it continues to shine bright. And we are really excited. And very rarely on our show do we have any real conversations outside of the traditional residential world. And when I say traditional residential, I'm talking condos, could be rentals where people live. So residential rentals, condos for sale, single family homes, those type of traditional people buying or selling property where they live. We almost never have discussed investments. We did for a while when I first started 5 years ago. And then we realized we can't do it as well as some of the other podcasts like Bigger Pockets. And we just haven't really explored any other sectors of commercial, whether it's, multifamily investing, mixed use, or like, hey, I specialize in gas stations or in factories or development deals in these, whatever. So we are really excited to chat with you because I would love to, because it's a big question we get on our from our listeners, which is, hey, how do I get into commercial? And it's like, well, I don't know what that means, right? Like commercial is such a broad term. It's like, how do you, it's like, it's so broad, it doesn't have a specific answer. So before we get to all of that, I'm just giving the audience a taste of what we're going to be sort of chatting about. I would love to hear your journey because you're relatively young. You've accomplished a tremendous amount, and you're actively involved in helping the National Association of Realtors, as well as on the state level and the local community level. You have been involved in really all major areas of real estate. And really, first of all, I want to thank you for all of the help you're giving every one of our listeners by helping support realtors. So thank you for your service in all of those areas. It's really, we're really honored that people step up to do that like yourself. But on top of that, you're also extremely successful as a commercial agent. So how did you get into real estate?
So funny little tidbit, I actually have a background in the performing arts. I actually grew up playing piano. And so I'm originally from New York. And if you ever seen the movie Fame,
sure,
that was what my high school was based off of. So
wow.
I went to the Fame School and I studied jazz performance. And so the reason I mentioned this tidbit of my life is because I started to get interested in real estate while I was in high school. And that was kind of during the phenomenon of when we had reality shows start to go crazy, like Flip This House and different things of that nature. And that was during the real estate booming. That was the circa, I was in high school between 2004, 2007. And so I've seen a lot of, my family and peers and church members get into real estate. And so it piqued my interest because I knew people that were appraisers, agents, inspectors. And of course, at 15, 16 years old, you can't get into the industry. You're not legal enough yet. So by the time I graduated high school, that was when we had the big market crash.
Yeah.
And so I transitioned from New York and moved to Chicago to attend Columbia College Chicago, and I studied music business. Because one of the things that I realized is you always see all these documentaries about artists and selling millions of records, and then they're broke. And, I didn't want to be that starving artist. So essentially my degree is a focus, it's a business degree, but with a focus and emphasis on the music industry. And so as I transitioned from, college student to college grad, I decided to explore once again, because the market had shifted from when I had graduated high school. I decided to explore getting back into real estate. And I knew from a personal side that I didn't necessarily want to do residential. The goal was always commercial from an investment perspective. And so that's kind of how I kind of transitioned into jumping into commercial real estate. So shortly after graduating college, I did 1 year. I operated an event space. And then after I did that for a year, I decided to go ahead and get my broker's license. And I started January 2014 as a licensed realtor.
Amazing. And it started immediate. Well, actually, I want to go back. So back to the New York side, because you were on your way to probably like maybe a Juilliard or
correct.
Right. So that was your path, and that's that's the fame is a great. I'm glad you mentioned that, and maybe a lot of our audience will go like, I don't know what that is, because it was the early '80s when that movie came out. But it's a great film, and great music. But anyway, that's where you were headed, I can tell. And there's probably other schools too. Maybe I don't know, Berkeley's out in California.
I actually did a summer program at Berkeley, and I was looking at that school as well. And so essentially, the arts was kind of my direction.
That's where you were. That was your thing.
But
and then you started thinking, hey, there's limited career options here.
Right.
I also, maybe you didn't. Yeah, it's tough. It's just obviously you can be the greatest, pianist. And maybe you're playing with a symphony or you're playing in a band or doing whatever, but there isn't an immediate obvious path to, sort of building a successful, especially now with the music career being so tricky. So it makes perfect sense. And I'll have to remind, one of us will have to remind us to ask you what your favorite pieces that you ever played, if you can remember, so we could save that to the end. But I am I love music as well. I've been playing it most of my life. I started on piano, not to the extent that you did, but transitioned to guitar when I was 13 and have done that ever since. But so why did you start with commercial? Just out of curiosity, because I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm going to guess it's 99% of people who get their license do not start there. Let's talk about, and because it's typically the less immediate path, right? There tends to be a longer lead time between starting as a commercial agent. And again, we should probably define what commercial is in a moment, but it's typically a lot longer. My brother-in-law is a commercial broker down in Florida. And, he works mostly with storefronts and things. And he, it's amazing that he'll work on a deal for 2 years. And then when it hits, it's a really good hit, but he isn't eating for 2 years, So I appreciate the hustle there, but why'd you decide to go that route?
So as I mentioned, when I transitioned as a college student, college grad, I realized that most artists need some form of space, whether you're a dancer, whether you're a musician, whether you're a singer or painter or whatever, you need a space to showcase your art. And so I thought, hey, why not go ahead and lease a commercial loft? So I had an artist loft that I leased out to other artists. And what happened was I came across an old article about the building owners and when they bought the building and pretty much how much they paid for it, because before it grew to what it is now. It wasn't really developed when they bought it. And so I paid attention to what they bought it for. I did the math of what they were collecting rents from me and other tenants in the building. And I said, man, they are making a cash cow. I need to understand commercial investment on how to see the vision of a value add property, buy it, renovate it, lease it up. And then when I learned about how you can refinance a property and kind of, what I'm saying, do it all over again, I
Sure.
said, I want to do this in commercial, because the thing with residential is typically if you're doing a rental property, let's just say a single family home or a condo, if you have one vacancy, you have 100% vacancy.
Right.
Versus commercial, where there's typically additional tenants, depending on, like you said, we got to define what commercial is, but typically there are multiple tenants. And if you have one vacancy, it doesn't, like a single family home, it doesn't necessarily wipe out your entire investment. So me just reading an old article kind of sparked my interest. And then from the music side, I was watching a Ray Charles documentary. And when he passed away, they said his net worth was 75 million. And the crazy part was 50 of that was due to real estate.
Yeah.
And so I said, there's a way to combine my love for the arts and my love for real estate. And, just seeing other artists, when you hear about their net worth and they break it down, real estate is always in their portfolio.
You're absolutely right. I think to like Roger Waters, who is the basically the lead songwriter and bass player for Pink Floyd, although he hasn't been with Pink Floyd forever. He's still, because their albums still sell well, he's still one of the highest paid musicians, but his real estate portfolio is like insanely successful. So you are absolutely right. Every sort of wealthy celebrity that has financial advisors, or those financial advisors are going to find income producing opportunities for them, and there's a lot of tax advantages too.
Right.
So you were essentially doing it with the space before you became an owner. You were essentially doing it on a smaller scale, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, I might as well become the owners of a place like this, and then you get to realize all those additional benefits. So let's take a step back just to make sure our audience understands what commercial you particularly focus in, because of course there's so many different kinds. Right. Let's talk about what specialty that is your interest.
So actually, I've had experience in all types of commercial. So I'll break down the commercial sectors. So we have what's called retail. So it's typically anytime you go into a store and you're buying, a piece of clothing like H&M, things of that nature. That's what we kind of consider retail commercial. And then we have industrial warehouse. So typically that's kind of where stuff is stored, manufactured, things of that nature. Then we have office. So that's typically where you go to work, that type of stuff. And then we have what's multifamily. So multifamily commercial is typically 5 units or more. So if you live in a larger housing complex, like there's 100 units, we would consider that, even though it's residential, people are living there, but we consider that commercial because it's 5 units or more. So those typically the general sectors in commercial real estate. And I have experience in all of those sectors. I've done deals in all those different things, but I would say my sweet spot of a lot of deals that I do on a day-to-day basis would be multifamily and industrial deals.
Wow, that's interesting, though, because those are very different in my mind, but they're both very cool, I think, because the multifamily, I think, is easier for strictly residential agents to sort of wrap their mind around. They understand it because they're probably doing some rentals themselves as realtors, and they certainly understand people live places and they live in apartment buildings. And here in Chicago, we have a lot of multifamily properties, compared to other cities, and especially Chicago South Side has just a ton of that. And but also the industrial side is very interesting, because to me that's That's typically not in the super urban areas, those that are
Correct.
mostly residential. You may be going more to the outskirts. These are bigger, of course, properties that have a whole different skill set, I'm sure, that's needed from you to be
Correct.
able to effectively place a client in their space,
Right.
or find, be able to list it and help, sell it. But I am fascinated. So we get a lot of people who ask us, hey, I want to get into commercial. And of course, first would be, okay, well, what sector, right? What sector interests? But let's talk about sort of, I want to first, before we get into that, I want to hear, because I think this is really important, is you are not just a commercial broker doing commercial deals. You have a mission and a purpose that I think is really important for our audience to understand why we're so excited to have you. So can you talk about your ultimate vision for what you can do in the commercial space?
Yes. So my ultimate vision is to revitalize urban communities. I know there's this buzzword and it's kind of like a kill word, gentrification, gentrification, gentrification. I know that's kind of like where everyone runs. But my goal is to improve these communities without displacing the original native residents in the area. And when you go through Chicago's South Side, it is so beautiful to understand the historic properties and history of it, especially like communities on the South Side, like Bronzeville, to know, being a musician myself, and to know how many jazz musicians settled in this community and built their name, and how many clubs and, performance venues happen to be in this area. And then over the years, obviously it fell into despair, and now it's making a comeback. Oh, now that we have new development. And I feel like through commercial real estate is one of the best avenues to improve these communities. Because one of the things that kind of help improve communities is new development, bringing businesses here. When you bring businesses here, that means there's job opportunities. With job opportunities, that means there's a need for housing. So it's kind of like a trickling effect of things that happen through commercial real estate. So that's kind of my focus, is to really build up, because I feel, even though I'm not originally from Chicago, I feel that Chicago is a beautiful city. It has its challenges, but I think as a group, a collective group, we can overcome those challenges.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I'm really impressed that you have this sort of higher calling, aside from, obviously the success you're experiencing personally, is this like, hey, I want to make a difference, and it doesn't just extend to your business. And I think, first of all, everyone listening, if you don't have a higher purpose, and it doesn't mean, of course, that you have to save the world. That's not what we're saying, but whatever part that you can contribute to your local community as realtors, this is where we live and play, is in a local community. Anything you can do to make that community a little shinier, a little more beautiful, or just helping out when there's need, I think not only will ultimately help your business, because people are very attracted to working with agents who do think that way. So aside from it, that's kind of a secondary benefit, but the primary benefit is you're going to have a heck of a lot of fun, and you're going to be able to immerse yourself in a community and say, I want to help because this is where my business is, and I work here, and I want to be a beacon of light. And this for you doesn't just extend to your business. This is something that you are somebody that I've been very impressed with for as long as I've known of you. Because you also give back to the realtor community. So aside from just, hey, the local community in the parts of the South Side that are like really interesting to you, that you want to make more beautiful and better and bring jobs, you also say, hey, every realtor out there, I want to help you too. And you've served at the local, state, and national level. So can we talk, just to digress a little bit from commercial, because if people are listening, if nothing else, Moses is a really great example of how you can become a leader within the realtor community, whether it's local or nationwide. So can you talk about why that's important to you, and why you enjoy doing that?
Yes, I think a lot of us get caught up in I get a lead, I show a property, I put a contract in, and I close a deal, and I get my check. And I had to learn there's more to this industry than that. And a big part of my job is advocacy, standing on the front lines and advocating for others that don't have a voice. And so it was important to me once I learned that there are positions and leadership opportunities for me to serve my association, not just on a local level, but on a national level. It was a no-brainer for me to get involved. And like I said, and there's also a personal benefit because there are certain things that are on the legislation table that can immediately impact our business. When COVID happened, this was the first time that as realtors, if you were struggling, that you could apply for unemployment. Why was that, right? That was because we had people advocating on our behalf on Capitol Hill. This is why it's important to get involved, because there are certain things that directly impact your day-to-day business.
Yeah, and there's so much that can be said about why getting involved is important. And I think that it's a cool thing. I was thinking about this the other day. I was feeling a little down. I was having a tough day. Just to not having to get into specifics, but just whatever. I was having a tough day, and I had the Chicago Association was doing a little volunteer opportunity for a couple of hours, actually at an industrial warehouse here in Chicago. And I had already signed up for it, but I was like, it's not that I didn't want to go. I just was feeling kind of down. I had other things going on, and I was like, okay, I'm going anyway. So I showed up and I helped, and I love doing things like that. But I came home and I thought, you know what nobody ever tells you, and I this is a little selfish, but it's a nice selfishness, I think, because you're helping, is you get to feel good about yourself when you contribute in any way, whether it's giving back, to realtors as you have, giving back to your community. There's a certain sense of like, I'm doing some good here that helps self-esteem. It helps confidence. It just helps you feel good. And it doesn't mean, you should be rewarded, with all of these accolades because you help out, but you're going to get to feel good regardless of if anyone ever knows you're doing it or not. And I really wish I had learned that much earlier in life, because I think that it is a tremendous way to not only further one's career and knowledge, but also just to go, you know what, I am actually making a little, at least a little bit of a difference.
I think one of the best feelings I ever had when I served on the CAR Foundation, we partnered with another organization that helped displace homeless families. And so there was this family of like 8 single parent, and they were living shelter to shelter. We were able to secure them housing, and we helped them move in and set up their furniture. And so when the kids walked in and saw that they had their own bed for the first time in years, I mean the joy on their faces, like you said, that gratification of, I know I'm in the right field, I know I'm doing the right thing, and you can bring joy to little kids' faces that were displaced for years, and to see that they were just happy just to have their own bed.
Wow, a single parent with 8 kids. I mean, that seems like the toughest mountain in the world to climb. And that person was, and then having to move and to shelter to shelter. I mean, not to get hung up in that particular story, but like, if we all just think about that, every single one of us listening can have an impact in somebody's life, whether it's, through helping them personally, or helping, as Moses, if you've done it even on the national level. And you are now on the board of directors for National Association of Realtors as well. So congratulations on that. That is a huge deal. Can you talk about what is, so you deal a lot with commercial. And the National Association of Realtors, again, commercial is a relatively small percentage of the overall number of transactions done by realtors in the country, of course, because, we all have to live somewhere. So the most of the transactions are going to be residential. But what would you say to our audience for anyone that says, I would like to add in, I'm a residential broker, I'm sorry, guys, when I say broker in Illinois here, we only have brokers. So it's an interchangeable word with agent, realtor. So just excuse my language. States are different. So we'll just say agents from going forward so I don't confuse the audience. Because like in Florida, broker is like usually the person that's in charge, the boss.
Yeah.
And anyway, whatever. Oh, by the way, if anyone from National Association of Realtors is listening, if we could just make it the same in every state, that would be awesome because it would make my life easier. So do it for me, please. No, I'm teasing. But for people that are thinking, hey, I'm a residential agent and I'm thinking about maybe adding in, some new skills, and maybe one of those is commercial. Number one, do you recommend that if for a true, almost exclusively residential person, or do you typically recommend, partner with somebody who really specializes in that sector?
So, as we kind of mentioned before, there's so many different sectors of commercial real estate, and it depends on the intensity of the deal. There are a lot of moving parts within the commercial real estate sector. So let's just say we're doing a commercial lease, like retail, like you say, you're representing the store. There are different types of leases. It's not like your general lease, like residential, where you may have a 1 year lease. Typically commercial, our leases are a lot longer, at minimum 3 years, on average. But of course, it can go up to 20 years, 25 years, depending on the intensity and caliber of the deal. But the reason I mention that is there are so many nuances. And if you don't understand the lease, you can do a disservice to your client, not understanding what type of lease, the nuances, the lingo, the language, and having understanding. So I would say it would be great if you don't, it's hard to take a crash course, in commercial real estate. But now, if it's kind of like you're dealing with like a small mom and pop, that owns a little, 600 square feet storefront, you might be able to wiggle your, self, through the deal. But if we're talking about, you're looking at a strip center, mall, or something of that caliber, and you're dealing with an institutional landlord, you can't really wiggle your way, through those type of deals. Because like you said, we have a different process. Normally with a residential contract, you already have a pre-made contract laid out. All you got to do is fill in the terms. With commercial, we start with what's called a letter of intent. And that kind of spells out the terms that we're looking for, and there's a lot of moving parts. So to your question, would I recommend someone that has no commercial experience to try to do a commercial deal? No, I would definitely refer it out or partner with someone. I do have a lot of residential referral partners that I do partner with. And if they do want to learn, they can shadow me in the deal, and we'll kind of work through the deal. I'll be the lead agent on it, and we'll kind of work. And I kind of train agents in that way to do commercial deals. But it is not like a fly-by-night type of thing that you can do. Now, I will say, depending on your local association, I know the Chicago Association of Realtors does a good job of offering electives and classes on commercial real estate. There are also other trade associations. We have what's called ICSC, that's for retail. We have ULI, that's for, it's called Urban Land Institute. So there are different other trade organizations within the commercial industry that you can join to be a part of. And they also offer different commercial classes. But I think the biggest thing is wherever you hold your license, if they do commercial training.
Yeah.
That's the really biggest thing.
You're absolutely right. And I'm sorry for stepping on what you said. And just in case it didn't come through, because I was blabbing on, Moses was saying, hey, if the company you work at, if that's not really what they do, then maybe consider, referring it to a true commercial broker, and vice versa, right? So there's we get calls from people who work at these large institutional commercial firms like a Marcus and Millichap, Cushman and Wakefield, Jones Lang LaSalle, CBRE, those big, huge companies where they're like, we don't even know about residential. We don't let our agents do residential. They only can do these, these big giant deals, and they refer people back to residential agents as well. And they get paid on those referrals. And I think it's really cool too, because like you were saying, you partner with agents. And I'm just curious, and please I hope this does not come across in a way that suggests that you're doing this for this reason, because I know you're not. You have this amazing altruistic quality to you. But I'm just curious, being as visible as you are because of how much you serve the local associations, as well as the state and the national, I'm curious from a referral perspective, because you're more visible, do other people reach out to you simply because they know that you contribute in these ways and say, hey, by the way, I do have an opportunity in Chicago. Maybe they're not even a local broker.
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, I just had the opportunity to go to France, and I represented the Illinois Realtors at one of the largest commercial real estate conferences called MIPIM. And their NAR does have a presence at that booth. And I actually ran into someone from another, state that was like, oh, hey, I sent so-and-so, I gave them your number because they were looking for an industrial property in Chicago, and you're like the first person I thought of in commercial. So yeah, and I was like, yeah, we talked in X, Y, and Z. So to your point, yes, people do, because I do hold certain positions and leadership, and I am fortunately a top producer within the Chicago Association of Realtors and commercial. So top of mind, people think to send me referrals from other cities, other states, and other positions as well.
Yeah, it's a nice sort of ancillary or just sort of accidental benefit, which I
Yeah.
know is not the reason why you serve.
but
It is.
but it is a benefit.
Yeah.
And when you do serve in these positions, it should be some benefit to you because it is a lot of commitment to serve in these positions. Like you said, you were having, not so the best day, but you were still committed to going to this event. There should be some type of benefit in doing these things. So yes, as a byproduct of me leading in these positions, yes, I do get referrals and I am top of mind to people.
Great. And I have a question too about the commercial side, which is around it's funny. Let's just talk about what a typical commission might actually be, because I feel like residential agents really don't understand how commissions are even structured oftentimes for commercial. And again, it depends on the sector, obviously.
Yeah.
But let's look at maybe the most accessible version of commercial, which would be maybe retail, because residential agents do get those opportunities.
Yeah. So the thing is, and I'm glad you mentioned that. One, in commercial, you have to make sure depending on what side you're representing, if you're representing the buyer or the tenant, you want to make sure that there's a commission being offered,
Right.
Like the MLS, typically MLS, there's a commission stated. A lot of times commercial practitioners do not use the MLS. We have other platforms and tools like CoStar, LoopNet, and Crexy and others.
Crexy, yeah, sure.
And sometimes the commission is not stated. So number one, you need to ask, what is the commission? And you're saying, what a general feel for what commission is, not to violate any antitrust law.
No.
I know.
Yeah.
I just, making that statement. But with retail, it can be structured differently. Like you said, I just did a lease. Sometimes you can get a percentage on the first year of the lease, and then a different percentage on the rest of the years. Because like I said, sometimes you're signing 5-10-year leases. So you may get a percentage when they first sign the lease, and then you may get another check when they actually open up for business. And then you may get another check, after 1 year of being in business. So there's different commission schedules depending on what type of commercial it is. If it's a sale, typically, like you said, you can just do a flat, percentage split between you and the cooperating broker. So, it's similar to residential and the commission, but like I said, sometimes if it's a larger deal, you're not getting your money all up front. You may have to split it in quarters, and sometimes you may get paid on renewals of lease and different things like that.
Yeah, I was talking to a broker yesterday who was an attorney who only does commercial, not on this podcast, just somebody here at our firm. And she was telling me, I don't even remember what the actual deal was, but she didn't really get into too much detail, but she said she would get paid 3 times on it. And it was something like 4% of maybe the lease or whatever, 3 different years.
Yeah.
And, but I guess the point is it can be structured any which way.
Yeah,
And
it's the Wild Wild West in commercial. Yeah.
which is also a good reason to maybe not, as a true residential agent, try to go that route, because there's just a lot, because it's so flexible. And
Right.
so there's just so many different ways in which it can be structured.
Right.
And you sort of just don't want to be in a position where, if you're like, I really don't know this area, that all of a sudden maybe you're putting the client in a bad situation without realizing it, and maybe even putting yourself in a bad situation with respect to commissions.
Yeah, because like you said, I mean, like you said, generally speaking, sometimes with residential rentals, you may be offered half a month, months, there's a range to that. There's no industry standard, but just generally speaking.
Yeah.
But with commercial, if you represent a tenant and they sign a 5-year lease, you're shortchanging yourself to only get a half a month's rent when you could have gotten paid, like you said, 3 times. But if you don't know any better, and if your brokerage don't know that this is kind of, and like you said, certain commercial agents, they may know that you don't do commercials. So they may just say, well, they'll take this. I ain't got to pay them that. Right. So it pays to know these types of things.
Yeah, and also too, you mentioned there isn't really a true commercial MLS. We have our MLS, which does have some commercial properties on it. Probably every local MLS does to some extent, but a lot of commercial property, never hits the local MLS. It might hit some third party, we'll call them unofficial MLSs, like Crexy, CoStar, LoopNet. And if you're somebody who really is trying to play in the commercial space and you don't subscribe to those types of services, you don't have as much access to those listed properties, because the MLS is just going to have limited exposure to commercial, because just a lot of things just exchange hands outside of the MLS. And if you look to get those types of memberships, CoStar, LoopNet, Crexy, et cetera, they tend to be quite costly. Not that they're not worth it. They're just expensive. And if you're already paying, $1,500 a year for your local MLS, and then you're paying maybe another, grand or two or more for these other, it gets costly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that's also another thing is that people want the big commission checks, but don't want the investment. The reason there's a higher entry barrier to commercial, because like you said, the payout can be potentially bigger, but you have to be able to invest in yourself. So like you said, when you ask if it's a residential person that doesn't know anything about commercial and they try to cut corners, because like you said, if you're representing a buyer and they ask you, oh, hey, what should our offer be? What is this property worth? You can't go in the MLS.
Not easy to run comps.
Because there's not going to be any data.
Right.
You have to go through some of these third parties, or you have to have relationships with certain brokers to get, to give them a call like, hey, I know you listed so-and-so, what did it, end up moving for? And you have to understand that with commercial, there's different evaluation processes. So like, with residential, typically, you guys use the sales comparison approach, which is for the sticks and bricks of the building, right? The value is typically the same for residential property, whether it's occupied or vacant, generally speaking. Now with commercial, that value may be completely different, right? If it's occupied or vacant. Prime example, there was a California investor that purchased like a KFC here in the Chicago market. He ended up, he bought, KFC was the tenant. He bought the real estate and KFC was on the lease. And I think it was like a 10, 15-year lease. He bought it for like 1.2 million. I think the pandemic had hit and somehow someone didn't do their due diligence. I don't know how, but KFC, they didn't personally guarantee the lease. The franchisee didn't personally guarantee the lease. These are commercial terms. And they were able to wiggle out of the lease. And they end up closing. And so when they close, remember, he bought it for 1.2 million because there was a long-term tenant in place paying rent. When the KFC closed, the value of the property is only 500,000.
Yeah.
So with commercial, we essentially give value based on the income that it's producing. And so you have to understand how to, it's not like you said, multifamily, similar to residential, but you have to understand certain mathematical equations to give your client an overall perspective. Do you know what the capitalization rate is? Do you know the cash on cash return? Do you know, different terminology that typically residential agents do not have an understanding of, so that you give your client the full perspective of where their offer should be.
Yeah, it's very complicated. It really is a different world in many respects. And I would say the wisest agents I know, not that they don't want to expand their skill set, because you should always be expanding your skill set. However, they don't, play in, they don't swim in waters where they're not sure how deep it goes, because it's just too dangerous. It's too scary. And they're probably just not going to do a great job for their client, not because they're not wonderful people. They just don't have that skill set. And for me, it seems, but you're right. It's easy to calculate if you find out what the commission would be. It's easy to look at that number and say, I could probably get this done. And maybe you can, but boy, it's a tremendous amount of risk and stress. And for me, it seems you can refer it to a person like of course, like Moses, who can probably get the deal closed a lot faster and with better terms. And this is obviously what you do all day. And then still get, a certain percentage of the income as of the commission as the referral. And boy, it seems like a lot better path to go.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, you want to limit your liability, and you don't want to do a disservice to your client. And so, like you said, you don't want something to come back to you, on the back end, that's something that a commercial person would have called on the front end. Like, hey, did you see this term? Like you want to, catch stuff up front. But if you don't know, then you don't know to advise your client on these different things. And so, kind of like you said, there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of nuances that it's kind of hard to learn on the fly unless you have, you shadow someone. And like I said, I paid my dues. I'm still learning, but I've paid my dues. I've shadowed people. I've worked under people. I've, done deals with others. And now I've built, to a certain point, I've invested in myself. We have what's called the CCIM. That's kind of like the premier designation. I'm investing in that, completing that course. So there's a lot of investment that goes into being a commercial real estate, not just outside of the tools, but the education and then getting the experience.
Have you noticed, and obviously the pandemic has changed so many things, a lot of us are sort of concerned in our local communities, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, obviously, nor do you speak for every commercial agent, and I know your particular sector isn't, your specialty necessarily isn't like office space, but have you seen any trends that suggest that we're starting to return back to offices? Our businesses? Obviously, it depends business to business, but are people, working from home as much as they did during the pandemic, or is it here to stay, or where do you think we're headed there?
I think it's still going to be a hybrid model. I don't think people are going to work from the office 5 days a week, but I think what employers are doing now is enhancing the employee's experience. So now office buildings are having a lot of amenities. They're doing a lot of stuff that encourages you to come to the office that you can't do at home, whether it's because, like you say, you want to keep company morale up. There's certain things that it's hard to do, especially if you're a newer employee, to learn, you know what I'm saying? You want to be in the field. You want to build that company morale. And so I think it's about employers enhancing employees' experience to encourage them to come to the office. But like I said, I do think it's going to be a hybrid model. I think most companies are not going to force you to come in 5 days a week, but they are going to, have you come in maybe twice a week, 2 to 3 times a week, and then the other 2 you work from home. So I do, now that a lot of restrictions have been lifted, like you said, there's vaccines and boosters out. I think right now we're just learning to live with COVID. It's not going anywhere at this point. And of course, when numbers spike, then, it might, restrictions come back. But while we're open, people are returning to office, a lot of major companies. And you got to think there's a lot of money invested in these spaces. And so to let it completely go to waste, I don't think it's going to be a forever work from home. But like I said, it has created a lot of other opportunities, remote opportunities. But to answer your question, I do believe it's going to be a hybrid of things, and employers are going to learn how to better enhance the employee experience by coming into the office. So like I said, maybe offering yoga classes, outdoor space, company park, like things that encourage you to come to the office that it's
Sure.
hard to enjoy at home.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I've also, on the retail side, I've started here locally in Chicago in the neighborhoods that I'm most commonly in.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see some of those vacant spaces slowly start to refill. And
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. Curious if that's happening in the areas that you're interested in the South Side. Are we starting to see retail returning where during the pandemic, obviously it suffered tremendously.
Yeah.
Are we starting to see that come back?
Yeah. So, actually, I specialize in all of Chicago, Chicagoland area, but like I said, I just have more of a heart and passion for the
Sure.
South Side. But I do North Side, West Side, East Side,
Do it
wherever
all.
you want me to
Yeah.
be, I'm on there. But to your point, yes, retail is making a comeback in terms of, because like you said, there's less restrictions. Before there was all the vaccine mandates and all that type of stuff, but people are getting back out there. Businesses are able to thrive a little bit better with all the restrictions being lifted. So we are seeing those, retail spaces get filled, leases be signed, things of that nature. So I'm seeing that across the board, not just here in the city, but also suburbs as well.
That's a very exciting. So I always thought, oh boy, commercial is going to take this big hit during the pandemic because office space is
Right.
changing. People are working remotely. Of course, that affects local businesses, retail as well. People sitting at home all day, it's different when they get to walk around outside and shop. And now with ways where we can get things delivered immediately to us, where we don't have to physically visit brick and mortar locations as much as we needed to
Right.
before, which was the only way mostly to get goods and services. Now a lot of businesses are delivery based, and so which is wonderful for convenience, but it's nice to know that there are brick and mortar. We're seeing this revitalization of brick and mortar, and people are, quite frankly, it seems, and again, I'm not speaking for anyone
Right.
or everyone, but people are just tired of being inside. And
Correct.
yeah, it's look, it's great to be able to order things and have them delivered in a day or
Right.
two. It's also cool to go out and walk down the street, and if you have retail nearby, to
Yeah.
walk in and see things. And if that all goes away, if that actually goes away, just think about, and I really encourage everyone to really think about this and why it's
Yeah.
important to support local businesses in particular, especially small businesses,
Yeah.
but certainly all businesses, but certainly
Right.
small ones, because if those go away, think about what that does to the aesthetic landscape of the actual
Right.
visible landscape of the
Right.
community. It changes.
Right. I think the biggest thing is about the user experience. I think, like you said, people are tired of being cooped up inside and they want the experience. And it's so funny that you mentioned about small businesses, just because in the last 24 hours, I literally have just gotten 2 calls for small businesses that are literally busting out the seams in their current space and they need more retail space because the business is booming, people are coming back, and they're just like, hey, our current space is too small. We need to purchase a larger facility that can house our things. And like I said, this has been 2 businesses in less than 24 hours, small businesses that have called me. And like you said, they have decent budgets to do that. So when you ask, is retail coming back? By the calls that I'm getting, yes, it is.
That's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that, and I think it's important for our audience to remember that, again, we don't really just, if you're a residential agent, you have to not just support the homes in that community, but also think about what can I do to support these local businesses so that people may want to live in these communities
Right.
where there's local businesses. Because
Correct.
I know, especially here in Chicago, we have all these wonderful neighborhoods, and you get to choose which neighborhood you want to live in, depending on where you want and what you can afford. And a lot of it for me is, especially here, is I like living by cool shops. I like think that personally. And
Yeah.
I pay a premium to live by cool retail.
Yeah.
And if that retail and a lot of people where I live feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
There's great restaurants and
Yeah.
cool, shops and
Yeah.
whatever. And if that all goes away, guess what happens to the property value of my property? It goes
Right.
way, way down.
Right.
And not that it's important that I make a ton of money when I end
Right.
up selling my condo, because
Right.
who cares? But I want my community to be beautiful, because I am not looking to move anytime soon. I
Right.
want to stay. So I think about that when I'm purchasing things. I think, not that this is, I'm on any
Yeah.
sort of soapbox telling anybody what to do, but it's something to think about. And as realtors, we have a responsibility to help keep our local communities strong. And part of that is by supporting commercial, supporting retail, supporting all of the businesses that make up that community. Sorry, a rant over, but I just wanted to make that point, because it's easy for us to just think house, 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 house. And we
Yeah.
don't think about all of the infrastructure that goes into making those homes attractive, with all these
Yeah.
surrounding businesses. Whether you're in a suburb that you live in a residential development, well, you still need retail to support that residential development.
Right.
And it's really, really important. As we wrap up, I would like to talk again about getting involved. I sorry for going back to this for
No.
anyone if it's a broken record, but I really want to hear you talk about why we've talked about why it's important to you. How much have you learned about real estate? Has it furthered your knowledge by serving in all these different volunteer sort of opportunities, within the realtor sort of space? I have to imagine you just have more knowledge now about the entire industry and process.
Yeah, it's not just about the industry itself, but I have been an entrepreneur my entire life. And so I've never worked a 9-to-5 job. I've never did any of those things. And so my first experience in working into an organization was super eye-opening to me. I didn't know how to run a meeting and how to pass a motion and how, protocol in running an organization. So it gives you inside scoop on how to run an organization. So it builds your leadership skills. And then two, like you said, you do learn more about the industry. You learn about the history of the industry. You learn about what's coming and what to look out for, what to warn your clients about. You can also tell your clients, like I said, each year, typically the realtors, we have Capital Day and we go to Springfield, Illinois, and we go talk to our local legislators. And can you imagine telling your clients, say, hey, I went to Springfield to lobby on your behalf. I know that they're trying to increase taxes. I know they're trying to take away private property rights. And I talked to my local congressman and let them know that no, we realtors, we do not stand with this, X, Y, and Z. That makes you look so good in front of your client to let them know you have your best interests at heart. Because sometimes the perception is that realtors, what are we good for? Why are you guys getting paid all this money? Or really, it's not a lot of money when you break it down to how much cost and knowledge and investment that we put into our careers. And so it shows value. I think that's the biggest thing as realtors is showing our value. And so when you accept these leadership positions, it creates value point, because now you're knowledgeable, now you're gaining experience, and now you can advocate on your client's behalf, not just your client's behalf, but your industry's behalf.
Well said. And you're absolutely right. It also is an amazing thing to be able to say to your client, to say, not that you would say it for this purpose, but to be able to say, hey, just so you know, I'm not available tomorrow because I'm heading down to our state capitol to talk to our local congressman or a senator or house, a rep, to talk about rent control, or to talk about, whatever topics might be important that might directly affect realtors on either side, whether it's commercial or residential. It's certainly something that,
Yeah, I mean, not to cut you off, but one of the biggest things that was kind of on the chopping block is what we call 1031 exchange that a lot of investors use. And that was, certain legislation was coming down the pipeline that was trying to X that, which would have caused a huge housing crisis more than what we're in now. I mean, it would have been insane if they would have chopped the 1031 exchange, which is a tax strategy that investors use, to sum it up for those. But that, because I was able to speak and others were able to lobby, and thankfully they didn't, chop it and do all those different things that was talked about initially. So that's what, being in these leadership positions do for you. It not only helps you as a business person, but it helps protect your industry that could have devastating effects on your business.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And just to wrap up, curious about music.
Yeah.
Let's talk about piano. What do you have? And you might not have a favorite.
Yeah.
It's okay. But do you have a favorite piece that you ever performed?
Oh man, that's super hard, because like I said, I played, jazz performance. And so, we studied Duke Ellington. We
Sure.
actually, Wynton Marsalis, he kind of lived in the area. So anytime before a large concert, he would come in and critique us and give us pointers.
Wow.
And, things of that nature. So it's super hard to kind of say which song, because like I said, I did jazz. I actually grew up playing gospel, R&B, soul,
Wow.
country, pop. So it's just hard for me to pick one song. It just depends on the mood I'm in. But
That's a good point. I know for jazz pianists, the only pianist that I'm super familiar with, and I'm not even that familiar, would be like Bill Evans from
yes.
Bill Evans is amazing.
Yeah.
Thelonious Monk.
Yes.
I guess Herbie Hancock, of course.
Yes. Yes.
And then there's a guy, and I'm only going to say this is so funny. We're not a music show, but I want everyone to check this out. I think it's just a fun, if you're not a jazz person, this is a great album to try out. Dave Brubeck had an album called Take Five or Time Out. I think it's called Time Out.
Yes.
And it's a real accessible, fun, and it's kind of like, I don't know. It's a fun album. It's a very accessible album. Chick Corea, of course, as well. So those are the Duke Ellington, as you mentioned. There's so many great. Oh my gosh, I could.
It's hard to choose. So, like I said, I've been fortunate to be able to combine my love for real estate and music, and actually have my own music publishing company. And so what I do is, it's called Mohall Publishing. So what I do is I acquire publishing rights to notable artists. To certain songs. So anytime a particular song is streamed online, played on radio, placed on a TV ad, I generate a royalty check.
That's amazing. Good for you. That's really awesome. And are you still playing piano as well?
Yes. So I still play out, occasionally, not as much as I used to in my younger years, but I still get out there and play on the scene.
Wow, good for you. Well, we'll if there's any samples that we can provide to our audience, we'd love to feature you. Maybe there's a YouTube video we can grab or something. That would be really fun for us. But Moses, thank you so much for being on our show. I think you are extremely enlightening about the importance of working with a trusted commercial partner. And by the way, we should also mention that Moses is a great person to know in this industry. So if you do have any commercial opportunities that are happening here in the Chicago area, including the suburbs, he works all over, because of course businesses are all over. He would love the opportunity to chat with you. So if you're an agent that maybe has a business moving in here or needs some help, or anyone who's maybe an investor in the commercial space, Moses, what's the best way somebody should reach out to you?
You can reach me on all social media platforms at Moses, Moses, Hall, Hall. So I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. You can find me, Google me. I'm definitely findable, and I'll definitely respond to your messages as soon as possible.
And also visit him on his website, which is Mohall Commercial UD, which stands for Urban Development, mohallcommercialud.com. And again, Mohall Commercial on Instagram. We'll have those links in the show notes. Well, Mo, thank you so much for being on our show. Appreciate your time, and also appreciate all your service to the industry. You're helping us in ways that we don't even know, because most of us aren't as connected to what's happening behind the scenes to help keep our jobs safe, and also our just the regulations in line with the National Association of Realtors vision and goals, which is to protect our livelihoods. So we are super grateful to you for that. And also a good reminder to everyone else to think about a way that you can get involved and contribute. And you'll just have a lot of fun doing it and also do some good along the way. So on behalf of everyone here who's listening, we want to thank Moses for his time today. And of course, on behalf of Moses and myself, we want to thank our audience. You're the reason we can continue to put these episodes out, because you keep listening and you keep telling a friend. And we'll remind you and ask you for a quick favor to tell one other friend about our show. If you haven't already, please tell other agents that we exist. We want to keep growing as well. So anyone that you can think of that might be interested in hearing from somebody like Moses, who does so much for our industry, or just wants to learn more about commercials, send them a link to this episode. Easiest way to do that, we have a website, keepingitrealpod.com. Every episode we've ever done, you can stream live right there. Or if the person you're referring to is a podcast listener, just have them pull up any podcast app, search for Keeping It Real, and hit that subscribe button. And also, please, last thing we'll ask from you, please leave us a review on whatever app you might be listening. That really helps us learn more about how to better improve our show, and also what you like and what you don't like, so we can keep modifying it to better meet your needs. So thank you so much, Moses, for your time today, and really appreciate it. We will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Mo.
Thank you.